This is the Weekly Roundup on the EAC Cambodia channel, your look back at the week that was in the Kingdom of Wonder. A very good evening to you. My name is Andrew Barnes-Roberts, and we begin on Monday, the 16th of August. Pol Pot's last surviving henchman has launched his appeal against his life sentence for genocide and crimes against humanity. Khieu Samphan's 4-day hearing began on Monday. He first stated his intention to appeal in 2018 after being found guilty of genocide against the Cham Muslim minority and the Vietnamese people. His defense team told the court on Monday that that conviction had been made on insufficient grounds. EAC news reporter Reo Soko attended the start of the appeal hearing.
The legal team of the former Khmer Rouge's head of state, Khieu Samphan, alleges there were not sufficient reasons for convicting Samphan or sentencing him to life in November 2018. Samphan's lawyer, Kung Sam-on, says that 3 days after Samphan was sentenced, they immediately filed an appeal which has taken almost 3 years to start.
However, we would like to remind your honors that you did not decide on the merit of that judgment. Instead, you claimed that our appeal cannot be accepted because it does not fall within the categories that stipulated in the internal rules. It is true that internal rules does not allow the trial chamber to issue a judgment in 2 stages. Rather, the internal rule clearly prohibits and clearly stated special rules for the announcement of the judgment, which require the reasons, and it has to be written on the day of the announcement. And based on the rule 101, on the format of the judgment shall be put in 2 parts.
The trial chamber of the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia convicted Samphan of genocide, crimes against humanity, and grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of 1949. The court found him responsible through his acts or omissions as part of a criminal enterprise for having planned, instigated, ordered, or aided and abetted or being responsible by virtue of superior responsibility for several crimes between April 17, 1975 and January 6, 1979. The crimes included murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, imprisonment, torture, persecution on political and racial grounds, and of genocide by killing Vietnamese nationals and the members of the Cham community. The spokesman of the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, Net Piektra, told EAC News that the appeal is set down for 4 days.
The hearing of the Supreme Court Chamber to listing the argument from the different party, from prosecutor, from co-lead lawyer, and from the defendant themselves, why they appeal against the judgment, especially from the defendants. Okay. So the defendant already present their argument in this morning about the rule from the trial chamber on the judgment, etc., the argument on the law and the order practice. Okay. And after 4 days of the hearing, Khieu Samphan need to wait, other party need to wait until the 4th trimester in 2022 to get the final judgment pronounced by the Supreme Court Chamber.
Piektra has added that apart from the 4-day scheduled hearing, the chamber has allocated Friday, August 20, as a reserved hearing day if required.
After almost 3 years, Khieu Samphan's appeal against his life sentence has finally begun. But it will still a long way to go before he will know his fate. Monday was only the start of the 4-day hearing, and it won't be until the last quarter of next year when the court will hand down its ruling. Rhea Soko, EAC News at the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia, Phnom Penh.
The Taliban is back in power in Afghanistan. It recaptured the capital Kabul on Sunday and has declared that the war is over. It released a video statement on Monday saying its real test would now begin as it looks to meet people's expectations and resolve the country's problems. but the assurances have not stopped thousands of people trying to flee. The Taliban's deputy leader, Mullah Barada Akhund, surrounded by likely members of the new Afghan government, said it was time to provide for the people and improve their lives. He thanked God for giving the Taliban victory and committed the group to peace and to the service of Afghanistan. He was speaking from an undisclosed location hours after President Ashraf Ghani fled the country. Afghanistan's acting interior minister, Abdul Sattar Mirzaqual, took to state television on Sunday afternoon to assure residents of the capital that there would be no bloodshed. He said Kabul would be safe. But that's done nothing to calm anyone's nerves. Chaos erupted at Hamid Karzai International Airport in the early hours of Monday morning as people scrambled to board planes. An Istanbul-bound Cam airplane reportedly couldn't take off after being stormed by panicked Afghans. Hours later, as people continued to stream towards the terminal building, shots rang out. It is not known where the gunfire was coming from, but no casualties were reported, suggesting the gunfire was celebratory. Airline after airline is cancelling flights in and out of Afghanistan until the fluid security situation becomes clearer. Mindful of the Taliban's previous rule in Afghanistan, citizens are scrambling to the land border with Pakistan to try and flee. The Taliban has said it has no intention of returning the country to an extremely conservative Islamic state. But cities that fell before Kabul all reported women suddenly being banned from their places of work, girls being sent home from school, and public executions being carried out on anyone who dared to oppose the group. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says no one should recognize the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan, even while conceding that it was inevitable they would return to power.
I think it's fair to say that the US decision to pull out has accelerated things, but this has been in many ways something that has been a chronicle of an event foretold. We've known for a long time that this was the way things were going.
The Taliban reclaim Afghanistan almost 20 years after being ousted by a US-led coalition for sheltering Osama bin Laden, the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. Their new promises of peace will be closely monitored by a nervous world seemingly caught off guard by this weekend's dramatic turn of events. Well, let's take a look now at some other news from around the world making headlines this Monday, the 16th of August. Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry has declared a month-long state of emergency following Saturday's deadly earthquake that left at least 1,297 people dead. The 7.2 magnitude quake, which was followed by a series of aftershocks, struck about 150 kilometers west of the capital Port-au-Prince at a depth of 10 kilometers. It was felt as far away as Cuba and Jamaica. While damage in the capital was limited, entire towns have collapsed in the southern part of the country, where most of the dead and injured have been reported. At least 950 homes, 7 churches, 2 hotels and 3 schools have been destroyed. A further 723 homes, 1 prison, 3 health centers and 7 schools have been badly damaged. Large parts of the area are now vulnerable to landslides. To make matters worse, Haiti is in the path of Tropical Storm Grace, which is expected to bring heavy rains and strong winds in the coming days. At least 20 people have been killed and 79 others injured in a fuel tank explosion in northern Lebanon. The country is suffering from a severe fuel shortage, leading to long lines at gas stations and extended blackouts. Military and security forces say the Lebanese army had seized a hidden fuel storage tank in the town of Al Talil and was in the midst of handing out gasoline to residents when the explosion happened. There are differing accounts as to its cause. One police report says an argument between a group of people led to gunfire which hit the tank. The local Al Jadid TV channel reported an eyewitness as saying that an individual lit a cigarette close to the fuel. And flooding has hit southern Japan, inundating streets and homes. Torrential rains lashed much of Japan on Sunday, submerging roads and buildings in the western part of the country, while 3 people were killed in a landslide in the central Nagano prefecture. As of Sunday morning, the rain had stopped in much of Kyushu, even as Tokyo and other parts of the country were pounded. A level 4 evacuation warning, the second highest, remains in place for Takeo and surrounding towns. On the first full day of the Ministry of Health's new COVID-19 awareness campaign, a popular market in the capital has been hit by a COVID scare. Entrances to Myenche's popular Bueng Tompon market were sealed on Tuesday morning. It is scenes like this that the new Together with Shared Responsibility to Contain COVID-19 campaign is hoping to put an end to. Barricades and tape, a sign that yet another area of the capital has been sealed off, however temporarily, with a suspected case of COVID-19 having been detected. The national campaign was launched on Monday, designed to heighten public awareness and reinforce safety measures across the country, especially with the number of Delta variant cases steadily climbing. Health Ministry spokesperson Dr. Orr Van Dien banged the drum, saying preventative measures need to be seen as the new normal in our daily lives. Across Phnom Penh on Tuesday, it appeared that the message has sunk in, with the vast majority of people wearing masks and using the Stop COVID QR code. But social distancing remains a problem, most especially at markets and outside factories, where keeping a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters is nigh impossible. But the World Health Organization says the situation is improving in the kingdom. Country Representative Dr. Lee Island says the new campaign comes at exactly the right time, with COVID fatigue perhaps the biggest threat to getting past Cambodia's infamous 20 February community event. As the appeal hearing of Khieu Samphan continues, survivors of the Khmer Rouge say they trust the kingdom's laws to deal with him. Samphan is the last surviving henchman of Pol Pot and is appealing his life sentence for genocide and crimes against humanity. The appeal hearing has stirred up bitter memories for those who survived the Khmer Rouge, but they've told EAC News that the law must take its course. They spoke to EAC News reporter Ray Osoko.
3 women have shared their stories how they survived the Khmer Rouge regime. They mostly remember the starvation and the punishment if they didn't work hard. That was the time when Khieu Samphan, Pol Pot's last henchman, was head of state. They say they followed the laws of Khmer Rouge in order to survive, and so this time they will let the laws of the kingdom punish him. They say Samphan deserves to suffer. 78-year-old Yin Liep was a teacher during the Khmer Rouge. She says she was very careful in everything she did in order to stay alive.
Khieu Samphan deserves what he gets now. He is lucky that our government didn't execute him. I'm glad that our government now has a heart and didn't punish Samphan the way he did us during the Khmer Rouge.
Another survivor, 57-year-old Niang, was a child during the regime. She still remembers the feeling of starvation. As what I can see, according to what he did to all Khmer citizens, it was too much. He deserved to be punished by life imprisonment. I would be happy if the government rejected his appeal. 61-year-old M. Saven says she worked hard on a farm to be able to get food.
Life was not easy back then. They only gave us a cup of rice for 3 people. Now, as a citizen, I don't know what to say. I just follow the law and the decision of the government because at that time, I lived under the Khmer Rouge law, doing what they told me to do.
These women say that working hard and following instructions were the most important things to do during the years of the Khmer Rouge. But now, they say they support whatever the government and the law will decide regarding Khieu Samphan's appeal against his life sentence.
Most of the Cambodians we spoke to told us they are content to leave it to the kingdom's law, the ultimate fate of Khieu Samphan. While the horrors of the Khmer Rouge are still fresh in their minds, they say they followed the laws at the time, the reason they are still alive today. Rhea Soko, EAC News, Phnom Penh.
US President Joe Biden says he stands squarely behind his decision to withdraw US troops from Afghanistan, a move that has caused chaos and regime change, with the Taliban now back in control of the country. Biden told reporters overnight that the mission of the United States was never supposed to be nation-building, blaming the Taliban's takeover on Afghanistan's political leaders who fled the country and the unwillingness of the Afghan army to fight the militant group. Biden is facing a barrage of criticism over his handling of the US withdrawal, pulling out troops and then sending thousands back in to help with the evacuation. But the US isn't the only country which stands accused of abandoning Afghans. The Swedish and Dutch embassies both reportedly evacuated their expat staff without even informing their Afghan colleagues and then blocking their official email accounts. While the weekend's mass evacuation initially caused panic in Kabul, calm does seem to be returning to the capital. There's a strong Taliban presence on the streets of the Afghan capital, with the new regime set to declare a new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. A Taliban official has told Reuters that its fighters are going door to door, collecting weapons from civilians because people no longer need them for personal protection. Taliban spokesperson Sahil Shaheen took to Twitter to say the group was under strict orders not to harm anyone. The streets are quiet, but some shops remain open, and residents have been filmed going about their business. Even as Western governments continue to evacuate staff and Afghan associates, the Taliban says the safety of Afghan citizens and foreign missions are assured. It's all a stark contrast to the scenes at Hamid Karzai International on Monday, where 5 people were killed. It's still not clear how the victims died, although US and Taliban troops had fired into the air to try and stop people forcing their way onto the tarmac and onto planes. Shots were also fired outside the airport as the Taliban tried to control the crowd of Afghans rushing to the terminal building. At the United Nations, an emergency meeting of the Security Council was called. It has urged the international community to provide humanitarian aid for the Afghan people. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for a united effort to secure their basic human rights. Afghanistan's permanent representative to the UN, Ghulam Izachai, expressed what many governments around the world fear.
We are extremely concerned about Taliban's not honoring their promises and commitments made in their statements at Doha and at other international fora. We've witnessed time and again how Taliban have broken their promises and commitments in the past.
China's deputy representative Geng Shuang went as far as to urge the Taliban to make a clean break with its terrorist past and work with nations around the world to ensure a lasting peace for Afghanistan and its neighbors. Days after losing its co-founder to COVID-19, the Cambodian circus Phra Ponlu Salpak has received 4 prestigious Stevie Awards. They follow its 24-hour non-stop circus performance in March, going for a Guinness World Record for the world's longest circus show. EAC News reporter Reo Soko has the story.
They've triumphed against the odds to win 4 golds at the Stevie International Business Awards. This is despite their most difficult 2 years ever because of the pandemic. And the news comes just days after losing their co-founder, Sray Bandaol, to COVID-19. Phra Ponlu Salpak has been recognized by the Stevie International Business Awards as Best Cultural Event 2021, Best Event for a Cause 2021, Best Communications Campaign for a Nonprofit 2021, and Best Fundraising Event 2021. Phra Ponlu Salpak's Executive Director Osman Hawaja says this year has been an emotional roller coaster.
Our staff and our performers have gone through some very difficult times. Just a few hours after the exhilaration of succeeding in performing for 24 hours, which was such an incredible achievement by our artists and the staff supporting them, we had to close performances again as the current outbreak grew more serious. More recently, we lost our beloved founder, Sray Bandaol, to the pandemic. Receiving the news of these 4 awards in the wake of his passing is a powerful acknowledgement and recognition of the power of the arts, something he believed in and dedicated his life to. His most recent work at FAR was all about leading activities to bring arts to the Cambodian communities. And these awards, particularly for Best Cultural Event, are a recognition of those efforts. I am sure he is smiling at us with pride.
Earlier in March, the circus group organized Fa Into the Future, featuring 90 circus artists who performed nonstop for 24 hours in Battambang. The event was also their way to raise funds as they have been hit hard by the pandemic, resulting first in smaller audiences and then total closure. Fa Punlu Silpak is still waiting for the committee of the Guinness World Records to finalize its assessment on their bid for world's longest circus performance. Rhea Soko, EAC News.
The investment and advisory firm Mekong Strategic Partners says Cambodia will be able to reopen its economy to attract investment and tourists much earlier than its neighbors. It released a report on Tuesday entitled Vaccination Nation, hailing what it described as Cambodia's remarkable vaccine rollout that is dramatically outperforming that of even some developed countries. As EAC News reporter Rhea Soko explains, Mekong Strategic Partners believes this means a faster post-pandemic recovery for the kingdom.
A well-strategized and rapidly executed COVID-19 vaccination rollout has resulted in Cambodia being amongst the global leaders for vaccinations. This is what Mekong Strategic Partners have declared in their report titled Vaccination Nation, Unmasking Cambodia's Vaccination Success. It makes a vaccination comparison between Cambodia and its neighbors, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia. It says that Cambodia's vaccination success is reflected in falling case numbers and a declining number of deaths. It has added that Cambodia is now one of the first countries in the world to be rolling out booster shots and vaccinating children, which could mean that the country may reopen soon. Mekong Strategic Partners John McKinley told EAC News from the Netherlands that although they are seeing the likelihood of Cambodia reopening soon, that'll be a decision taken by the government.
We feel that it is obviously ultimately it's a decision for the Cambodian government to decide. We feel, given the kind of outstanding job and the situation that's occurred in Cambodia, we feel very strongly that it's likely to be much further in advance of the neighbors. So we look at our sort of estimates on timeline is that by the end of September, over 70% of the population, including over 12s, will be vaccinated. So we think this, Cambodia is years ahead of the neighbors, unfortunately, who we anticipate will also accelerate in time. But if you were to look at Vietnam, for them to reach the same period of coverage, they have another year to go. So we would think potentially that the government may want to review the situation as we hit that benchmark of 70%, including over 12s in maybe early October. Late September, it should be achieved.
The report says the economic evidence also shows that high vaccination rates improve economic outlooks as well as health outcomes, with Cambodia on track for GDP growth above 6% in 2022. Rhea Soko, EAC News.
The Taliban is striking a conciliatory note as it takes control of Afghanistan. It held its first media briefing in Kabul late on Tuesday, telling reporters that Afghans and the international community have nothing to worry about.
Victorious after a 20-year fight against US-led forces and having spent most of those years in hiding, the most senior members of the Taliban casually walked down on a flight of stairs and took their seats under the full glare of the world's media. Speaking through an unnamed interpreter, Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid gave his assurances that the rights of Afghans would be protected.
Women will be afforded all their rights, whether it is in work or other activities, because women are a key part of society. And we are guaranteeing all their rights within the limits of Islam.
He went on to say that Afghanistan will no longer be a battlefield. and that an amnesty had been announced for all those who worked with coalition forces and the previous government. He says a new inclusive government will be formed for what it is now, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, and that international relations will be maintained and press freedom will be guaranteed. He also invited those who were trying to flee to return to their homes, saying they have nothing to fear. On the streets of Kabul, the Taliban maintain a heavy presence, though, manning checkpoints across the capital as residents return to work and their own new normal.
EAC News fully supports the Royal Government of Cambodia's preventative and administrative measures against COVID-19. But we need you to play your part in helping bring the 20 February community transmission event to an end. Wash your hands regularly, sanitize wherever possible. Keep an eye on your body temperature. Use the Stop COVID QR code and maintain a safe social distance. But above all, please, 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 wear a mask. Only together can we beat COVID-19. If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of eArts Cambodia's platforms and channels: YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and our website www.eartscambodia.com. Join me, Andrew Barnes-Roberts, and the rest of the EAC News team every day on your favorite channels. EAC News, Cambodia made clear. Pol Pot's last surviving henchman now has over a year to wait to learn if his appeal against his life sentence has been successful. Khieu Samphan's 4-day hearing came to an end on Thursday afternoon in the Supreme Court chamber of the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia. The 90-year-old is serving a life term for genocide and crimes against humanity. EAC News reporter Reo Soko attended the final day of the hearing.
Khieu Samphan has strongly denied all allegations against him, the accusations which saw him sentenced to life in prison. Facing international prosecutors on Thursday, Samphan says he was only ever protecting the Cambodian people, protecting them against an invading army. He is referring to the Vietnamese of whom he was accused of committing genocide. He claims he knew nothing about Pol Pot's crimes. He says even to this day, he has no idea where genocide or any crimes against humanity were actually committed.
I declare that I cannot accept the accusation that I was involved in a plot to commit crimes against my compatriots, including the Cham or the Vietnamese. Many years after sitting as a defendant, at the end of this long case, it is important for me to inform you, and especially inform the Cambodian people, that I have never wanted to commit a crime against my compatriots or against anyone else.
No matter what you decide, I will die in prison. I will die always remembering the suffering of my Cambodian people. I will die seeing that I am alone in front of you. I am judged symbolically rather than by my actual deeds.
Samphan has highlighted that he only ever wanted the Kingdom of Cambodia to have independence and sovereignty, where his compatriots could live together in harmony. The national and international persecutors have said Samphan played a big role in decision-making, with him being head of state during the Khmer Rouge.
ពាក្យតងសវនាការនេះមានសារៈសំខាន់ដោយសារតែការកាត់ទោសនេះគឺសិតតែជាលោកខៀវសំផននេះគឺជាប្រមុខរដ្ឋអតីតប្រមុខរដ្ឋអញ្ចឹងចង់និយាយថាតឡាការកូនកាត់ផងយើងនេះគឺកាត់ទោសសិទ្ធិមេដឹកនាំកម្ពុជាដែលទទួលបន្ទុកសំខាន់នៅក្នុងរបបសម័យ75ដល់79ការដំណើរការនៃការកាត់ក្តីជនជាប់ចោតនេះសិទ្ធិមេដឹកនាំកម្ពុជានេះបើសិនជាយើងធ្វើប្រហែសអាចនឹងមានអសន្តិសុខអញ្ចឹងមានការគិតគូរវែងឆ្ងាយរបស់រាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលដឹកនាំដោយសម្ដេចតេជោដៃមួយគឺរយុទ្ធធម៌ដល់ជនរងគ្រោះដែលឆ្លងកាត់ពីរបបបល្ល័ង្កពូជសាសន៍ខ្មែរក្រហមនិយាយចំទៅប្រជាជនខ្មែរទូទាំងប្រទេសនឹងតែម្ដងហើយចំណុចទី2ទៀតគឺរក្សាស្ថិរភាពសន្តិភាពនយោបាយឲ្យបានពីព្រោះយើងធម្មតាយើងដឹងហើយថាវាមានតំបន់ខ្មែរក្រហមអតីតខ្មែរក្រហមនៅអញ្ចឹងការកាត់នេះគឺថានិយាយចំទៅគឺដោយភាពប៉ិនប្រសប់ដំណើរការទៅរលូនអត់មានស្អីដែលបន្ទូប្រទេសឲ្យធ្វើឲ្យមានអសន្តិសុខនៅក្នុងតំបន់មានការច្បាំងរាំងជលអីផ្ទុះអាវុធអីអាហ្នឹង
According to court spokesperson Neth Piektra, it could be late next year before the court hands down its ruling, although National Co-Prosecutor Chia Liang says that they do not have a specific date, and while Samphan's age has to be considered, the matter must go through due process. His age has to be considered. The matter must go through due process.
Kia Samphan says that he is living his life in prison anyway. He cannot help but cry out loudly that the border problem between Cambodia and Vietnam still exists today. He insists that he committed no crime. But it'll up to the judges to examine all the grounds of Samphan's appeal and whether he'll end up dying in prison. Raya Soko, EAC News at the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia, Phnom Penh.
Cambodia has delivered its COVID-19 assistance to Myanmar. A government delegation led by Minister of Health Mam Bun Heng left Phnom Penh International Airport this morning. On board, cash aid and other medical equipment. The health minister was responsible for some precious cargo, $200,000 in cash along with 3 million face masks, 500,000 rapid test kits, 2,000 sets of PPE, 100 oxygen generators, 20 ventilators and 20 patient monitors. In offering the assistance earlier this week, Prime Minister Hun Sen also reconfirmed his pledge of $100,000 for Myanmar through the ASEAN Humanitarian Assistance Centre. That has now been matched by the Cambodian Red Cross in a donation to the Myanmar Red Cross. The cash and medical equipment couldn't have arrived soon enough in Myanmar, where COVID-19 cases are surging. As of Thursday, the country has 360,000 registered cases with 13,623 deaths. Back in June, barely 350 deaths had been reported. Now for a look at news making headlines around the world this Thursday, the 19th of August. We begin in Afghanistan, where the security situation is rapidly deteriorating after a calm that lasted barely 24 hours. At least 3 people have been killed in anti-Taliban protests in Jalalabad after trying to replace the Taliban's flag with the national flag in the city centre. The protests came amid news that an old resistance group called the Northern Alliance had been reformed and was advancing from the north. More trouble for the Taliban came from the man calling himself Afghanistan's rightful president, former Vice President Amrullah Saleh. Pictured here on the left, he says he's the country's rightful president after President Ashraf Ghani fled the country as the Taliban took control of the capital. Saleh took to Twitter from an undisclosed location to urge the armed forces and ordinary citizens to join the resistance. Security analysts fear Afghanistan is once again headed towards civil war. Tens of thousands of people in Argentina are staging protests throughout the country, demanding work for the unemployed and better housing. This march in the capital was convened by a group of social organizations and led by the Polo Obrero, a social organization affiliated to the left-wing Workers' Party. Protesters are also asking for more social programs, public works programs, and food assistance through soup kitchens. And Greek firefighters are at it again on the outskirts of Athens. They're battling a wildfire in one of the last remaining pine forests outside the capital. The village of Vilia, together with 6 others, has been evacuated along with a nursing home. More than 400 firefighters, including 143 from Poland, along with an army of volunteers, are battling the blaze. The fire started on Monday and is being fanned by strong winds. More than 500 wildfires have broken out in recent weeks across Greece, ravaging swathes of pristine forest and forcing the evacuation of thousands of people. The country has seen some of its highest temperatures in decades. They say age is just a number, and 19-year-old pilot Zara Rutherford certainly believes that. She's bidding to become the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. She took off from an airfield in western Belgium on Wednesday. A very brave young woman sitting down with reporters before the start of her 51,000-kilometer journey. 19-year-old Zara Rutherford says this trip isn't just about her.
It's a dream I've had my entire life, to fly in a plane around the world. It's just this crazy idea. I always thought it would be impossible. But then I decided, if I don't tell anyone about it, then it's never going to happen. So I told my parents, and straight away they were like, yes, let's do this. And with the media attention now that I've been getting, I'm hoping to encourage girls and women to hopefully also go into aviation and STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
It was then a final pre-flight check in her tiny plane before it was time for takeoff. Rutherford is seeking to take the title from Shayesta Weiss, who became the youngest woman to fly solo around the world at the age of 30. The youngest male record holder is Mason Andrews, who was just 18 when he made the journey. Rutherford will fly for about 5 hours a day and make a scheduled 52 stops on a journey that will take about 3 months. As if that wasn't enough, she wants to start university next year with the dream of becoming an astronaut. Prime Minister Hun Sen has called for a united global effort in the fight against human trafficking and COVID-19. The Prime Minister delivered a speech at 6 p.m. on Friday to mark the start of the annual National Interfaith Forum on Combating Human Trafficking. This year, the Prime Minister urged everyone to pray for humanity, with human trafficking as well as the pandemic continuing side by side. Following the Prime Minister's speech, bells and drums rang out across the country. EAC News reporter Reo Soko has the story.
Drums and bells, the two main instruments signaling the celebration of the National Interfaith Forum on Combating Human Trafficking. It's an event that's been held every year in Cambodia since 2017. Held remotely this year due to COVID-19 restrictions in public gatherings, it was kicked off by the Prime Minister. In a speech addressed to His Majesty King Norodom Sihamuni, the Prime Minister asked all religious communities to unite in offering prayers to save humanity from human trafficking as well as COVID-19.
In 2021, the COVID-19 crisis continues to spread, while human trafficking and transnational crime are also on the rise, and opportunists take every opportunity to take advantage of this difficult situation. I, Your Majesty, understand that the Interfaith Forum must be organized in a new way to remind the people of all nations and religions in the Kingdom of Cambodia, as well as the people of the world, to change and adapt to this new path in this COVID-19 period, with a strong emphasis on humanitarian spirit, compassion, respect for life, and dignity of humanity, ethnicity, and religion. On behalf of the Royal Government of Cambodia, I, Your Majesty, am proud to maintain the harmony of all religions in the Kingdom of Cambodia through active cooperation, especially the persistent implementation of culture sharing during this difficult situation.
Prime Minister Hun Sen went on to call on all the kingdom's civil servants, institutions, national and international NGOs, civil society, the private sector, and all citizens to pray and commit to jointly eliminating the scourge of human trafficking. Minister of the Interior, Sa Keng, revealed in July that in the first 6 months of 2021, government intervened in over 100 more cases of human trafficking than when compared to the same period last year. In a Facebook post, he added that these activities included arranged illegal marriages and the illegal migration of workers abroad. Rhea Soko, EAC News.
Despite the ongoing COVID-19 situation in the kingdom, food prices remain stable. This is one of the key findings in a report released by the United Nations World Food Programme in partnership with the Agriculture Marketing Office in the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. It says the national average retail prices for most key food commodities have shown only small fluctuations in both rural and urban markets. EAC News reporter Rhea Soko has the details.
The National Food Price Trend Analysis shows that since January last year, domestic food prices have remained pretty stable. They did start to increasing last March when the pandemic first started, but then dropped again in January, just before the February 20 community transmission event began. With border closures and preventative measures disrupting supply chains, most basic commodities are up compared to the same period last year. The report specifies the prices of duck eggs, snakehead fish, and vegetable oil, but the price of pork and rice have dropped. Despite the continuing impact of COVID-19, the report shows that Cambodia's aggregate statistics of trade and agricultural production remain favorable. Although ongoing preventative measures means customer traffic at markets continues to drop, especially in the capital. The World Bank has estimated that the kingdom's GDP growth contracted by 3.1% in 2020, but is expected to grow by 4% in 2021.
Lockdowns, curfew, closures of high-risk businesses and borders. These are just some of the preventative measures that have affected the Cambodian economy. But the government has been quick in providing aid, especially in its cash support program. The Cambodian economy remains resilient. Rhea Soko, EAC News, Phnom Penh.
Well, let's take a look now at news making headlines around the globe this Friday, the 20th of August. Afghanistan's Independence Day, celebrating its break from Britain in 1919, was marred by violence. Protesters took to the streets of more Afghan cities on Thursday as opposition to the Taliban spreads, with this group in the capital parading a long national flag through the streets. The flag has become a flashpoint for violence, with Afghans insisting that it, not the Taliban's, should remain the country's flag. Protesters have shouted, "Our nation, our flag," as they've marched in cities across the country just days after the Taliban takeover. They want assurance from the Taliban that they will not return to the brutal style of their previous rule between 1996 and 2001, when they severely restricted women's rights, staged public executions, and blew up ancient Buddhist statues. Over a dozen people have already been killed in scuffles over the flag nationwide. In the eastern town of Asadabad, several people were shot by the Taliban after tearing down its white flag in a city square. One struggling to maintain control. US forces fired tear gas and shots into the air to disperse crowds of Afghans at Hamid Karzai International Airport. The scenes at Kabul Airport this week have focused the world's attention on whether countries have a duty to accept Afghans who are fleeing because of fear of persecution. The evacuation of Western citizens and Afghans who work for foreign governments continues. Dramatic footage out of Bolivia as a storm rips the roof off a local store and sends it careening into power lines. No one was injured, but a number of other buildings were badly damaged. Winter storms are not uncommon in Bolivia, but the intensity of this one caught many by surprise. There was even hail reported in several parts of the region. The storm conditions are expected to start easing going into the weekend. And the US Federal Trade Commission has refreshed its antitrust case against Facebook. It's added more detail on the accusation the social media company crushed or bought rivals. It's also once again asking a judge to force the social media giant to sell Instagram and WhatsApp. The expanded complaint effectively argues that Facebook is dominating the US personal social networking market. The FTC accuses Facebook of an illegal buy or bury scheme to crush competition. Facebook says it will continue to fight the lawsuit, describing it as meritless. It says its acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp were cleared many years ago and that its platform policies are lawful. Ending the week on the best news possible. The Museum of Ice Cream has opened its first international outlet in Singapore. Just $28 gets you free flow ice cream and a host of interactive exhibits. They're calling it your new happy place. And who could argue with that? A pond of sprinkles, some might call it a pond of pink eye, and all-you-can-eat ice cream, socially distanced, of course. The 60,000 square foot facility opened on Thursday following strict coronavirus guidelines, which include mandatory check-ins and vaccination certificates or a negative rapid test result. Singapore residents say it's a welcome break from the pandemic and great value for money. Head of Asia Pacific at Museum of Ice Cream Singapore, Pirakash T, says more international locations are being planned. We can only hope Phnom Penh gets in on the scoop. EAC News fully supports the Royal Government of Cambodia's preventative and administrative measures against COVID-19. But we need you to play your part in helping bring the 20 February community transmission event to an end. Wash your hands regularly, sanitize wherever possible. Keep an eye on your body temperature. Use the Stop COVID QR code and maintain a safe social distance. But above all, please, 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 wear a mask. Only together can we beat COVID-19. If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of eArts Cambodia's platforms and channels. YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and our website www.eartscambodia.com. Join me, Andrew Barnes-Roberts, and the rest of the EAC News team every day on your favorite channels. EAC News, Cambodia made clear. Dutch driver Nick de Vries has won the Formula E World Championship. His rivals crashed out of the season's final race in Berlin on Sunday. De Vries actually finished in 8th place, but his season points helped him take the title, with Mercedes also clinching the team title. The all-electric race took place at Berlin's Old Tempelhof Airport. It was won by Frenchman Norman Nato for Venturi, his first win in the all-electric series. But 8th was enough for De Vries to finish on 99 points, 7 clear of Venturi's Eduardo Motara, who retired at the start when he smashed into the back of Mitch Evans's barely moving Jaguar. Neither driver was hurt. Other championship contender BMW's Jake Dennis also crashed out after the restart. This year's 7th season of Formula E is the first to be given full World Championship status by the International Automobile Federation. Chelsea's returning striker Romelu Lukaku says coming back to the London club at this point in his career is the chance of a lifetime. He was formally reintroduced to the media as a Chelsea player on Monday. Lukaku says he's looking forward to returning to play for the team where he said he learned the basics. He says now at 28, he's a totally different player, having become a father since he was last with the club.
As a person, you have to dream and, but you have to set yourself targets as well. And the opportunity came along, I think, at the right time because, the club wants to keep winning. And, you gave me an opportunity. And I think for me, the way how my career has been going the last few years, I think it was the chance of a lifetime. So, now it's time to put those words into practice on the pitch and, keep working and, hopefully winning as well.
Chelsea will be hoping he'll do some winning too. They paid a club record of $135 million for a 2-year contract with the option of a 3rd year, all going well on the pitch. The Tokyo Paralympics begin next Tuesday and the torch relay is on its final stretch. It's making its way through the last 3 of 47 prefectures on its way to the capital. But as with the Tokyo Olympics, the pandemic is playing havoc with planning. COVID-19 restrictions meant a portion of Tuesday's relay was reduced to a ceremony at the Yotsuike Park Athletic Ground in the city of Hamamatsu. Torchbearers who were supposed to carry the torch from Atami to Shizuoka instead ran around a track before passing the flame on with a so-called torch kiss. Other torch events took place as planned, albeit with reduced numbers of spectators. The Paralympics, like the Olympics, will take place largely without spectators. The Japanese government is set to extend its COVID state of emergency, not only in the capital, but other regions of the country as well. Organizers say school children will still be able to attend some events, though, as long as proper safety measures are in place. Italy's standout star from Euro 2020, Manuel Locatelli, has completed his loan move to Juventus from Turin's Sassuolo. The deal includes a $40 million obligation to buy the player at the end of the 2022-23 season, with terms and conditions. The 23-year-old midfielder scored twice in Italy's 3-0 group stage win over Switzerland to help it secure a berth in the last 16. It was a pivotal game, with Italy going on to win the tournament. Locatelli has scored 3 times for Italy in 15 appearances. He's a welcome addition at Juventus, with it having endured a difficult campaign last season. The defending champions finished 4th in Serie A. They begin their 2021-22 season at Udinese on Sunday. Belarusian sprinter Kristina Szymanowska, who effectively defected during the Tokyo Olympics, says she plans to apply for Polish sporting citizenship so that she can run for the country. The 24-year-old sat down with the BBC in Warsaw. She says she hopes her application can be speeded up, as the process for sporting citizenship in Poland can take up to 3 years. Szymanowska was the biggest headline of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. After criticizing her coaches on Instagram for not doing enough to combat doping, she was forcibly taken to the airport for a flight back to Belarus. After refusing to board, she fled to the Polish embassy in Tokyo and applied for asylum. She was due to fly directly to the country from Japan, but ended up flying to Poland via Vienna owing to concerns for her safety. She says Poland will now be her permanent home, and she wants to compete for the Polish national team as soon as possible. Thank you for watching the Weekly Roundup here on the EART's Cambodia channel. More from the EAC News team Monday nights at 8 in the Daily Roundup. I will see you then.